Hello, everyone. This is I'd like to say a mid-session 4 memo, a video memo, but it's actually the first week of session 4. So technically session 4 started yesterday on Monday. I'm doing this on Tuesday. So those of you that haven't made your initial posts can make them today and tomorrow and still get credit for advanced in that initial post category. So if you haven't done that, don't panic. I've been interacting with many of you in this discussion about large-scale standardized tests, and as usual, most of you have had your eyes opened about, wow, is that how they created those tests? I think one of you said, "Oh, I just thought some testing geniuses just kind of pulled questions out of the air." And that's many people don't have an idea of how these tests are created and how much time and care. Many of you have talked about the expense because that jumps out at you, $1,000 per question, and there's like 100 questions on the test. But I have added articles to course materials that can clear this up. I'm not sure if I have them in session 4 or session 5 about the cost of the status tests. No, I have them. I have that article in session 5. So if you go into session 5, because this discussion continues into session 5, if you go into session 5 course materials, I believe I have an article in there that talks about the costs of assessment. So, make sure you look at that before you start complaining or whining about the cost of exams, because percentage-wise, it's kind of low when you look at a district's entire budget. So a lot of people like to take those numbers out of context, and because they want to bash these state tests. So don't you be one of those bashers without being informed, okay? So there's many more articles in session 5 course materials that you can use. This one about Wiggins, why we should stop bashing state tests, is one that I use often. And I think I've even shared it in a couple of discussions already. Because when you read that, you'll see that teachers really don't know how to create good tests. Yes, they know their students. Yes, they know the standards. Yes, they know what they've taught. But one of the problems with preparing students for state tests is that you need to know how to make reasoning questions. And that's what Wiggins talks about in his article, is that their students struggle with inference questions that requires them to make an inference. So, and this is a big problem with my selected response test activity, that many of you just will refuse to create reasoning questions. And that's what an inference question is. It's a reasoning, compare and contrast, making inferences. Those are all higher order thinking questions, and they can be assessed with a selected response test. Surprise, surprise. So check that article out, and the relative cost of assessments. Okay, so you also, many of you have taken the test, and it was a pretty straightforward test. I think somebody said this was a much better test than the first one I had, which had matching, which frustrated a lot of you because the matching counts everything wrong if you only get one wrong. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to make the matching different, so there is one word on the left, and all the matching choices will be in one question. So I'll do that for how many ever terms that I want. So that'll make things a little easier or better to grade. So I'm grading your work. Many of you are probably saying, when's he going to grade our double entry journals? Well, I've graded I graded all of one group's videos. I'm working on the second group, 64023's videos, and I'm also doing your double entry journals. But I'm trying to give you a lot of feedback on these double entry journals, so it's taking me forever. So please be patient with me. I'm not ignoring you. I'm not being lazy. I work every day on this course, so I will get it done. And this week I'm hoping I'll make a big dent in it. And I know you did your response to intervention double entry journals, and one of the big things I've been finding is the double entry journals are meant for you to have a conversation with the text. Some of the ones that I've seen so far are just note taking, and that's not what I want. That's not what I want you to teach your students to do. Note taking is okay, but when you have notes, you take those notes to remind you. You use them to remind you. A double entry journal is to go deeper into the text, have a conversation, make connections to yourself as a teacher or learner, make connections to the other text, and to have strong opinions. That's what I want to hear. I don't want you to repeat what the author said. Some of you are repeating what I said. I know what I said, and I know what the author said. I want to know what your thinking is. What thinking does it provoke in your head? And I've seen some great ones where you're making insightful comments about the text and opinions. I agree with this because I've done this kind of thing in my classroom when I tried yada, yada, yada. So that is what's going to make this nonfiction text stick in your brain. And that's one of the big pushes in the Common Core, is to get kids to be able to understand, comprehend nonfiction text. And in order for them to do it, I have to be able to get you to do it. And double entry journals are one way to do that. I also, my wife just went to the state ELA conference, and this is one of the books she got and brought back. And there are some great strategies in here about reading nonfiction texts, which I would recommend. It's by Kylene Beers and Robert E. Probst. If you can see that, Kylene Beers, Robert E. Probst. So reading nonfiction texts is one of my overall goals of this course, even though it's an assessment course. I'm always trying to infuse strategies that you can take back and use in your own classroom. So that's really all I want to say in this semi-mid session 4 video teaching memo. Remember that many people are losing credit because they're making all their posts at the end of the session. So this session doesn't end till I think November. November 6th or 9th. November 9th. So you have a lot of time left to you should all be making 10 posts and getting that advanced grade in that category. It's not a big jump in your grade. It goes from an A to an A+, but what the heck? You may have a bad day someday and get a B, and that A+ will bring your grade up. So these are, the norms and test scores. You should all be getting 100 on that. Download the hard copy, take it first, go back into the quiz discussion board, and talk about the ones you had trouble with. You can see that these are all the quizzes you're going to have. This is norms and test scores. Nobody has made a comment in this group, has gone in and asked a question. So what's happening is people are just taking the test again. And so you're defeating the purpose of me trying to teach you how to use summative assessment in a formative way. And that's what I'm trying to do. Take the test once, take the hard copy, go in, talk about, I had trouble with this one, and what my other group, this is section 23, my other group, somebody jumped on right away and said, I really was confused about a normative sample and a norm sample. And they worked that out. They talk, go into Cohen and Spencer and here, or go into Popham, chapter 12, and look here. So that's what it's for. It's for you guys to help each other get an A+. Everyone can get an A+ in this course. That is my goal. And if it happens, and it did happen once, where everybody got an A, not an A+, but I got chastised, slapped on the wrist for grade inflation. And I'm going to be writing an article soon about grade inflation in higher ed, because what we're doing is we're teaching you that everybody shouldn't be getting an A plus. Everybody can't get an A plus. And if everyone does get an A plus, not only are you not doing a good job teaching, you're cheating. Where it should be the other way around. If everybody gets an A plus in your course, of course, that's why we have standardized tests, to make sure you're not cheating. If kids are getting A's in your course and getting bad marks on the standardized tests, that should send up a red flag. Something's going on here. So not only is my goal that you all get an A plus, but that you'll master the goals that I have every week. So that's it for this week. I will be back on Monday with a short teaching memo, talking about some of the comments that I'm getting about teacher-made tests, about standardized tests, about teacher involvement in test creation, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to interacting with more of you on this discussion board, and I'll talk to you next Monday.